So in the next 20 minutes, we'll be discussing building a great company culture. So Fred, you built Blablacar 10 years ago. You also have a background at Stanford, which is really technology-driven. So you have all the rights to be here at Hello Tomorrow. Thank you for coming. So can you please actually tell us how you define culture?
Culture would be the way people interact together and solve problems together. The way we tackle the issues that the company is facing every day, the challenges that we have ahead. And there are several ways to tackle them. And the best culture is when you actually define it together. So the way we have built our culture is by actually crowdsourcing it. When we were 60 people, about 4 or 5 years ago, we decided that, we saw that we were growing a lot. Today we have 550 people at Blablacar. And we saw that we could, even though we knew each other very well, lots of implicit values were actually part of our day-to-day life. But we thought that we needed to write actually those values to make sure that the next people who would join the team would immediately have a download of the way we work and the way we interact, because when you grow, you double the size of the team every year. The implicit is not something that can scale as fast, but explicit does scale. So what we did is we gathered like 60 people in a room, and then we said, okay, what do we want to say to the next people who'll be joining Blablacar, and what do we want to tell them, and make sure that we're all on the same page. And that's how we created 10 values, which are very simple, very action-oriented, and which we use every day. So you have values like the member is the boss. So members for us is member in the community. Today there are more than 35 million members in more than 20 countries using Blablacar. And so we consider that our role is to make the right service, the right product for our members, of course. You have values like fail, learn, succeed, which really say that actually you have to try in order to learn and succeed. Sometimes you fail, but actually you could say that sometimes you win and sometimes you learn, and that's it. It's really something that is important to us, that we continue iterating super fast. And then we've put a lot of tools internally at Blablacar so that everybody is able to communicate with each other.
Okay.
So we have weekly talks. So departments present what they've been doing in the past weeks, what they will be doing in the next weeks. And so that all the company is aware of what's happening in all the departments. That is super important, so that you feel that you are part of a bigger story, and that when you go back to doing what you have to do for the company to grow, then you know that everyone else at their position is doing whatever it requires to make the company succeed. Okay, and so your company is already 10 years old. How was the first year, and did you think about actively creating it like when you started? Actually, I started coding the first versions 12 years ago. I incorporated the company 10 years ago. At the beginning, it was really, of course, very few people. So we hired our first employee in 2009, which was already 3 years after incorporating. So it may sound like a long time, but actually what we did during this period was really to iterate on the product to make sure that we had some product market fit. And that we were able to have some traction and people actually using the service. Since we're a marketplace for so drivers with empty seats who are looking passengers going the same way on long distances. So being a marketplace means that matching people is super hard, and that's the main difficulty you face when you create a marketplace. And so it took a bit of time to make sure that the value proposition was good enough for passengers, at least, to find drivers to bring them where they want. Okay, and you were talking about the first person that you hired. I believe she was exactly meant to form the culture and to promote it within it. Yeah, well, initially she was just like what we had to do. So she's been doing almost everything in the company. She's been doing communications, selling platforms, because in the early days we were selling platforms to companies. So we had a B2B business model where actually we were offering a platform for companies to have their employees connect together, and employees would share their rides on their way to work. which is different from what we do today, and which is different from the original idea, actually, because the original idea was really long-distance ride-sharing like what we do today, but we struggled in finding a business model that would help the company scaling and surviving by having something that scales with volume. So we had activity for long-distance ride-sharing, but we had a business model on short-distance commute for companies. And so Laura, when she arrived, was doing basically everything from selling platforms like me or to companies and communicating also to make the service known. And so many other things, also helping the community and moderating things and make sure everything goes fine and smoothly in the community. So, and now over the years, it's true that her role has really evolved into being what we call the culture captain, because she's been here since the beginning. She's been everything evolve, and she's been she's been seeing the DNA of the company being built through the values that we created together.
Okay, and how do you see this culture evolve? Because I guess when you go from a small team to an international company like you run, in more than 20 countries now, the culture has to be impacted?
Well, yes and no. But the difference is, so the action-driven values that we have are really efficient to grow in a manner that is consistent. What changes so is that we're a global company now. We're not like we're not a French company. We're not even a European company because we're on three continents. Well, I still do have an accent, but the company is global. And so we have lots of people, of course, in the HQ in Paris. But the company is really global. We have 35 nationalities in the company. And that's really what matters. The culture will be international, but you'll find that in most global companies that actually you've got a global culture. So that's the additional value that is brought into the culture.
And how do you make sure that when you hire someone new, you share the culture and you embed the culture in the person, that the person has a feeling of empowerment on it?
So we diffuse our culture so much that now we really have people who will come interviewing with us who know the culture, and they will want to actually be part of that culture. So that's been a change, because like 3 or 4 years ago, me and my co-founders, we were a bit tired of always have to sell the company to people who would join, tell them how great we were, what great product we were building, how the culture was, and how it was really an environment in which everyone could flourish, that we decided actually to really put the culture out and say, this is what we are, and now we want people who will come to Blablacar because they love Blablacar, and then we will discuss about what we will do, and we don't spend like half an hour explaining what Blablacar does and what is the culture. So that's something which was really proactive from us, and this has led to our company having been recognized as well for its culture, because we've been able to externalize that, which were the values we have internally.
Yeah, you had a prize for fun and performance.
Yeah, the Great Place to Work Institute had created a special prize for us, which was fun and performance.
Okay.
Because when they discovered the culture we had created, they said, well, they are very efficient, and they are still they have a very fun ambience. The average age in the company is 29, so we have lots of young people, very motivated and global. And also we have lots of growth, which really helps for performance and fun.
Okay, so you went from formalizing a culture to turning it into a way to attract new talent that would fit in your company.
Yes, also because it's more efficient for us in the recruiting process.
And how would you advise to people, like especially scientists? Like you actually have a background from Stanford and you work for NASA. Sometimes things are really technical to explain. How would you help the scientist design a culture around this?
The best solution is to really gather people in the same room when you have like, I don't know, I think it can work with 10, 15 people as well. But we did it when we were 60. We had done some other exercises for culture before, but we did the values when we were 60. I think the best is to gather everyone in the room and say, okay, what motivates you every day? Why do you enjoy working at this company? Why do you enjoy building this service? And then see what happens. people will say what motivates them and what they want to say to the next people who join the company.
And so your company has employees, but you also have a massive community of drivers and users. How do you make sure that they also impact the culture and maybe rechange it?
So yeah, we have a massive community, of course, outside. We counted the other day that it's one employee for more than 70,000 members, which really motivates each one of us, because we think that every day we work for 70,000 people outside of the company, so it's a lot. And actually, it's now the culture is really a bit of the same in the community and in the company, because a community is based on several pillars. The first one is values, and so when the values are common, then you have a community which scales. People, events, and stories. All the communities you can think of, whether it's a community of sports fan, whether it's a community of like a conference like this one, where you have like entrepreneurs, investors, and lots of people interested by innovation. It's also a community, and this community has the same pillars of values. They have a common set of values, which can be innovation, motivation, success, and these kind of things. Then you will find also some people, so people who are really acting in the field and who are making it happening in all the directions. You will find also stories. So you have the stories of the companies, of the funds, of all the events themselves, and then you have events, just like this one. So all the communities are based on those 4 pillars, and that's what we develop in our community as well. We have all this, and the values are common between the company and the community. And then we organize events to meet the members. We have stories, we have characters as well. So people, for us, we have what we call the Blabla stars, who are members from Blablacar, but who do something which is exceptional. I don't know, they cross the Atlantic with a boat, or they've made a new photo exposition. They've created something, I don't know. And then we talk about them, or they play the guitar super well, and then we display them, and they become Blabla stars. It also creates the culture and the community.
Okay, and did you actually hire lots of members?
What do you mean hire?
Like in your team? Do you
yes, well, actually now, it's also very interesting. Most of the people who apply to Blablacar are members already. And so they know the product. They've got to know the culture as well through using the product and through seeing what it is. Because it's very in a sharing mode. And also internally in the company, everybody ride shares. And so we have what we call, so when you start, you're a beginner, and then you become an expert and an ambassador. Well, you have 5 grades, but then you become an ambassador, which is kind of the top grade you can reach. And even though in the community, it's super hard to become an ambassador. It's like super hard. I mean, you have to, you do a lot of ride sharings, and then your profile is full. You have lots of positive ratings. I mean, it's lots of things like that. And so it's about 1% of the community who is ambassador, but at Blablacar, we're at more than 35% of the employees who are ambassadors. We use our service a lot. And this also is part of the culture. We have a value which says, think it, build it, use it. And it's really close to this, because we think the product, we build it, and we use it.
Okay. And do you actually have any source of inspiration for building great culture? Any company that you admire? Any people that
I think we find good examples everywhere. We've always been patchworking, I would say. When we've heard about a good idea, we will take it, and we find a good idea and we think it fits our culture. Then we will take it. There's no one single example. Of course, if you would take, I don't know, 50 parameters about what is the culture and what makes a great company, then you'll find some companies who have maybe 10 or 15 parameters in common with us, and some others who have 2 or 3, and some. But so we really took the inspiration from many, many, many different companies.
And do you have examples of company or feature that you integrated?
Yeah, well, there's this thing for the product teams. We went to visit many, many teams in San Francisco to understand how they were made. So we visited Airbnb, LinkedIn, Slack, all these kind of companies, and we looked at the way they were working and building their product. with all the sizing you have to do and the roadmaps and also the organization in tribes. We have organization in tribes, which is a multidisciplinary set of people from 8 to 15, I would say, who are from developers to UX designers, of course QA, also the marketing or the need for the product. Then you'll have also data people, and so this kind of complementary people will create kind of a startup in the startup, and this is a way to work which is very efficient. They do that at Spotify as well, and so this is a kind of inspiration we get. So the thing is, we benchmark a lot with other companies, and it really helps us in designing what we think is relevant for Blablacar.
Okay. And what do you think how do you think the fact that you're a platform influence your culture?
Well, it influences the jobs that we do, our daily activity. So what we see is that we are part of a gigantic phenomenon, which is the platforms, which are based on the three technologies, so the databases, search engines, and connectivity. Those three technologies are now very well mastered. And by combining them, you are able to create lots of new opportunities and lots of new ways to share things which before weren't shared. So the first one is the most obvious. It's content. So it's something we used to own, like we used to own the CD, DVDs, and now it's all shared. You'll have so it began with Napster, and then now you have all the Spotify, Netflix, even Dropbox, and all these things which allow you to share your content. But before you had it for your own, and now it's all shared. Then you have knowledge as well. Before, knowledge was kind of confined in books or in your mind. Now you have Wikipedia, you have all the MOOCs, the massive open online classes, with services like Coursera or Udemy and others. You can also share money with all the crowdfunding platforms or crowd-lending platforms like Kickstarter or Lending Club. Or all these platforms allow you to not have your money stay in a bank account, but you can put your money on projects you like. So it's really important. So you share. You have your network as well. So of course, with Facebook and LinkedIn, your network before was something you owned, and now it's really shared. You can know who knows who. The assets, of course, with services like Airbnb, but also Drivey or Blablacar. So like your assets that you share your usage, always with the same three technologies: databases, search engines, and connectivity. And then you have the possibility to share your time and skills, which is historically called work. But it's all the freelancing platforms that you'll have. So freelancing will be platforms like Upwork or Thumbtack, where you can find graphic designers, photographers, and also people to clean your house. Or you will find people with time. Uber, to me, is also a freelancing platform because it's allowing people who have time and skills, they know how to drive and they have a car, to actually serve people who need to move around. So, and this is unlocking actually a brand new way of behaviors. Mm-hmm. So you have 6 types of platforms, and we are part of it. So the culture is that we learn how to build those platforms, and thanks to that, we create new jobs. Half of the jobs that you have at Blablacar today did not exist 5 years ago in Paris and also mostly in Europe. So we are really creating the jobs of tomorrow. Yep. Which is in sync with the fact that we have an average age of 29, so we're really creating the next generation of jobs who will be able to build new platforms.
And I guess when you go from a job to another, the culture also has to be super clear, and so that's why you formalized it through 10 different values.
Yeah, and actually it's so clear that we've made stickers, we placed we placed them on the wall, we also have them in cards. Actually, I always have the values on me, so... Think it, build it, use it. In trust, we trust. I mean, we made it super, super clear. The member is the boss, which we talked about. Yeah. So actually, it's also the way you diffuse it. It's not only to say them. It's also how you diffuse them. It's part of, I would say, internal marketing about this, and this is really important. And then we, the value fail and succeed, for example, is used like every day when we try things and we see, okay, it doesn't work. Let's try to do some other way and learn from that and succeed.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have a last advice for
Advice to whom?
advice to this room of people willing to know how you made it?
So, is the room made mostly of entrepreneurs, of
Yes.
investors, of
Tech entrepreneurs and investors who are happy to share your best practices with their portfolio, I guess.
Tech entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs? I would say don't start alone, because building a product is like building an engine. So you need your partners to make the engine run. An engine with only one doesn't work. So you have to be 2 or 3. What else? I would say.
And maybe more linked to culture.
To culture, create a culture and defend it. Because if your company grows super fast, it is what will tie everybody together. So it is super important.
Okay. Thank you very much, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you.